How to Talk Dirty and Influence People, an autobiography by Lenny Bruce, as read by Aaron Chase. Chapter 5. Standing on the deck of a warship in battle, you get a good look at the competitive aspect of life carried to its extreme. Our society is based on competition. If it isn't impressed upon you at home with the scramble for love between brother and sisters, they really lay it down to you in school. In numbers any child can understand. That's what grading is. You bring home 100%, and your mother hugs you, and your father pats you on the back. The teachers beam at you, but not your schoolmates. They know that they're in competition with you. If you get a high percentage, they must get a lower one. Everybody wants love and acceptance, and he soon learns that one way to get it is by getting higher marks than another fellow. In essence, you're gratified by your schoolmates' failures. We take this with us into adulthood. Just look at the business world. So for my first instinct in this structure of economics and critical success is to want Mort Saul, Jonathan Winters, Shelby Berman, etc., my schoolmates, to bomb. If I bring in a bigger gross at a cafe or a concert than Mort does at the same place, I've brought home a good report card. I struggle with this part of me which is inhumane. And now, perhaps this cannot be explained by the fact that I'm making enough money to afford to be magnanimous about it. I genuinely rejoice in other successes. I would like to believe that if I were still scuffling and Mort was doing well, I would still be happy for him. But I wonder, am I happy he's doing well, but not better than me? The USS Brooklyn was a big ship, and she was considered quite a danger and a nuisance by the enemy. At night, the enemy planes, unless they had inside information, could only tell what they were bombing by the firepower that was thrown at them. If they received nothing but 20 milliliters and 40s, they would assume that the largest craft below was a DE, or some other craft that carried only small arms. We were trapped in a strange bind. We were the only heavy power in the area, but if we threw up our big stuff, our 5-inch guns, they would know immediately that we were cruisers, and they would send for assistance to do us in. When general quarters sounded at sea, usually an E-boat or a submarine. I loved this because I wasn't afraid of being killed in battle as much as I was of being bored. Lucky for me, the guys in power at the time knew the real danger and kept me occupied. I was grateful, but it was still pretty exhausting, fighting 60 hours without securing from battle stations. Through 3 years and 4 major invasions, Anzio, Salerno, Sicily, and southern France, I was a shell passer with a heavy helmet that was lined with smelly foam rubber. 2 years of sleeping in a hammock, then graduating to a lower bunk. 3 years of hearing, "Now hear this," till I didn't want to ever hear it again. 3 years of being awakened by a buzzer that made that sound that a gigantic goose would laying an egg the size of a Goodyear blimp. Gonk, 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 gonk. This was the bass line. The boatswain's whistles, the trumpet just lacked a rhythm section to keep from being real hard swingers. The impersonal voice would boom over the speaker. "All men, man your battle stations. Secure all hatches. The smoking lamp is out." I'd scramble up the ladder just in time to get my helmet knocked off and my nose bloodied from the concussion vacuum created in the hatch cove. We would be bottled up in Naples Harbor, the Germans bombing, strafing every ship in the bay. It was blind man's bluff. As a child, I loved confusion. A freezing blizzard that would stop all traffic and mail, toilets that would get stopped up and overflown and run down the halls, electrical failures, anything that would stop the flow and make it back up and find a new direction. Confusion was entertaining to me. While the war was on, the alternation of routine and confusion sustained my interest. but then it was over and I wanted out. I had been a good sailor with a sterling record of consistent performance, but I wasn't a mensch. However, I didn't put the Navy through any red tape coming in, so I felt they should permit me to exit with the same courtesy. A lot of guys try to get out during the war, and I considered that cowardly, but I rationalized my schema with, well, why not? The war's over. But how does one go about shooting his toe off with an oar? We lay at anchor in the Bay of Naples, and the night closed in around me. I had to get out and get out fast. Other guys had gone wacky, some on purpose, and the only ones that had got out were those who just would sit and say no to everything. They got out, but with a dishonorable discharge. And by the time they were processed, it was 6 months in the brig, a trial. It is such hard time that it wasn't worth it, I had to think. You spend your whole life thinking and worrying. Worrying about the deposit bottles and where to cash them. The night it seemed that getting out of the Navy or getting out of the Mediterranean was years away. I wonder who was buying Mima or Vaseline. I closed my eyes in the pitch black night, and then all of a sudden the heavens seemed to light up like Times Square. For a moment I thought, I don't have to worry anymore. My problem has been solved itself. I won't have to pretend. I recall previous flashes in my optic nerve. I'm sitting at the Silver Dollar Bar in Boston, next to a girl with chipped, bitten-off, painted fingernails and lipstick on her teeth. We're having our picture taken by the nightclub photographer. Flash. It was the first time I saw a flashlight. My cousin Stanley was sticking it in his mouth, making his cheeks all red. Magic lights. The flash of lightning on choppy Long Island Sound as my Uncle Bill pulls in a flounder. Fireflies through the window screens. The lights in the Bay of Naples getting brighter and brighter. I wondered for an instant, is this the spiritual illumination I've read about? Will I see the Virgin of Fatima appear next? My vision cleared, and I felt a smothering wave of factory heat, hotter than all the asphalt roads in Arizona put together. Mount Vesuvius had erupted for the first time in centuries. Mount Vesuvius, the earth that bore the tree, that bore the fruit that fed the man, the carbon process. Each of us one molecule in the vast universe. The earth that saw man destroy his competitor, the earth that saw Italians killed. Italians, the Venetians, the brilliant colorist, the Italians that would soon clothe Miles Davis. The earth saw this and vomited that night in Naples. In the Army, you can get out if you're a whack. Why couldn't you get out of the Navy if you were a wave? Down in my bunk, I had a copy of Sociopathy Sexualist by Croft Eating. There it was. A transvestite is a nut who likes to get dressed up in women's clothing. He may never engage in homosexual practice or do anything else antisocial. He's completely harmless. But obviously, he would be an inconvenience to the Navy, where they like to keep everything organized by having everyone dress alike. I figured that if I could demonstrate to the Navy that I still had a great deal of patriotism and loyalty to the uniform, the old Esprit de Corps, rather than indulging myself with the obvious sort of feather bow nelegy and gold lame mule's drag outfit, then maybe instead of booting me out, they'd open the door politely and escort me out like an officer and a lady. Swanson, one of my shipmates, could sew as well as a girl. He was also a beer addict. He'd do anything for a bottle of beer. In North Africa, Gibraltar, Malta, Corsica, Sicily, wherever we made port, they had given us chits that entitled us to so much beer. I didn't drink beer, and I saved all my chits. Along with these, I won some gambling, and I also received quite a few for standing watch for different guys. I had enough beer chits to play Scrooge in an AA Christmas show. I gave my chits to Swanson, and his fingers flew to the task. The way he would throw himself into his work made me wonder about him. With the pleats, the shields, everything, he made me lieutenant. For a while, it was just scuttlebutt that a wave was seen promenading forward at the Foscals during the midnight watch. A number of guys who saw it didn't report it out of fear that they'd be given a Section 8 themselves. Finally, one night, I was doing my nautical Lady Macbeth when 4 guys, including the chief master-at-arms, jumped at me. I yelled, "Masher!" 4 naval psychiatrists worked over me in a naval Newport hospital. "Lenny, have you ever actively engaged in any homosexual practice?" "No, sir." An active homosexual is one who does the doing, and the passive is one who just lies back. In other words, if you were a kid and you were hitchhiking and some faggot came on with you and you let him do whatever his do was, he was an active homosexual because he performed a sexual act with someone of the same sex, and you are a passive homosexual if you allowed any of this to happen. You'll never see this in a AAA driving manual, but that's the way it is. "Do you enjoy the company of women?" "Yes, sir." "Do you enjoy having intercourse with women?" "Yes, sir." "Do you enjoy wearing women's clothing?" "Sometimes." "When is that?" "When they fit." I stuck to my story, and they finally gave up. Only it didn't work out the way I figured it. They drew up an undesirable discharge. At the last minute, though, this does sound like a fairy story, doesn't it? The Red Cross sent an attorney who reviewed the case and saw that whole thing was ridiculous, and there were no charges against me. The entire division was questioned, and when it was asserted that I had a good credit rating and virality, based upon paid-up accounts at numerous Neapolitan bordellos, I received an honorable discharge. So, everything worked out all right. Except they took away my wave uniform. It bugged me because I wanted to have it as sort of a keepsake of the war. I wouldn't ever wear it naturally, except on Halloween.